Hey guys, welcome back to Team 6K. This is Undead, and today we're going to be talking about Rockets again. You might have seen our previous Rokket video. This guide is going to be a lot more in-depth because of the new format, giving new context to this deck. There are some plays in this deck that we don't do as often anymore, but are still available to us that I showcased to you in our old Rokket video. So definitely be sure to check that out. We don't do those things as much in this version of the deck, but they're still available to us, so it's going to be helpful if you go and watch that other video. But apart from that though, if you are already well versed in this deck, I will leave a timestamp. But before we get into the video, be sure to go ahead and check out our last video if you have not already. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the bell to get notified every time we make a new video. Also be sure to check out our socials because we're trying to grow there while we're growing here on YouTube. So what makes the Rokket deck so good is that it's very good at playing through interruptions while also being able to put up its own interruptions. That's because the deck has so many special summons that don't rely on you having something already or get benefits if you've already been interrupted. The main starter of the deck is Rokket Tracer. It has the quick effect that you can target a face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon a Rokket monster from your deck, and then you cannot summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except for dark monsters. And what makes this better is if the opponent tries to interrupt this guy or one of our other cards, we could always chain the Tracer itself to destroy that card before they interrupt it, so that we're getting value regardless. And the rockets that it summons from the deck, well, I'll go into those in a second, but first of all, we're going to talk about Quick Launch here. It's just a quick play spell that summons any Rokket monster from deck, so of course you could use it to special summon Rokket Tracer. And if you get interrupted but you have a Quick Launch in hand, you could always just use the Quick Launch to keep going after being interrupted. And what's even better is if you have a Quick Launch and a Rokket Tracer together, you could normal summon that Tracer, activate the Quick Launch, and then in response with your toggle on, you use Rokket Tracer to target your Quick Launch to destroy it to summon a Rokket from deck. That way the Rokket Launch will still summon a Rokket from deck, but the Tracer will also summon a card from deck, and you use 2 cards to get a total of 3 monsters on the field because you got the Tracer and the 2 Rockets from your deck. But Quick Launch destroys it on the end phase, so we're going to either want to use that monster as material or have it be one of the other Rockets, because they will summon another Rokket from the deck other than themselves on the end phase that they were destroyed by battle or card effect. And that's kind of nice because we got a couple cards in here that we can forcefully destroy them with to make sure we get that floating effect on the end phase. The first of which is Rapid Trigger. It's a quick play spell. We only have 2 of it in the game, and you get to fusion summon as a quick play any fusion by destroying fusion materials listed on it from your field, but it can only attack monsters special summoned from the extra deck. Also, it is unaffected by the activated effects from any other special summoned monster from the extra deck. So it's important to keep in mind that it destroys its fusion materials, meaning that we will be able to get that end phase special summon from the effects of our Rockets. And the monster we're going to be summoning is Borrowload Furious Dragon. It requires 2 Dark Dragon type monsters. In quick effect, you can target a monster you control and a card your opponent controls, destroy them. You can banish this card from your graveyard as well, then target a link monster in your grave, special summon it, but it cannot activate its effects this turn, and you can only use each effect of it once per turn. So this guy is a quick pop. He's kind of like the Duel Links version of DPE. And if you summon this using the Rapid Trigger to destroy 2 of your Rockets, then they'll summon a couple more Rockets from your deck on the end phase, and you'll have this guy and 2 other monsters on the field to destroy, to activate its effect to destroy any of your opponent's cards. But of course we can't rely on the Rapid Trigger all the time. That's why we do have the Needle Sealing and the Dragon's Mirror. Needle Sealing, when there are 4 or more monsters on the field, destroy all face-up monsters. So of course you're going to destroy all your opponent's monsters and also all of your own. However, you're going to be able to recuperate immediately because on the end phase you're going to summon a bunch more Rockets because of the floating effects of your Rockets in graveyard. So you're going to be right back in the game and your opponent is probably going to have nothing. And then of course we've also got Dragon's Mirror. It's basically Miracle Fusion for Dragon fusions. And of course we'll go into the Borrowload Furious Dragon. The benefit of Rapid Trigger is that it destroys the fusion materials on your field, so you'll be able to float on the end phase. But the benefit of Dragon's Mirror is that the materials don't have to be on the field in the first place. They could just be in your graveyard and you can use them as material. After using for a Link, Synchro, or Xyz play, for example. If the opponent interrupts us really well, we also have the Boot Sector launch. We only play one copy of it because the skill basically guarantees it for us. So basically, if you control a Rokket monster, you set a Boot Sector launch from your deck to your field, and during this turn you cannot special summon monsters except dark monsters. And what does Boot Sector launch do? It's a field spell that makes all your Rokket monsters gain 300 attack and defense. Also, you can activate one of these effects. Either special summon up to 2 Rokket monsters with different names from your hand in defense position, or if your opponent controls more monsters than you, special summon Rokket monsters with different names from your graveyard in defense position up to the difference. So if they get rid of all your monsters while you're trying to combo, you can just summon them all back with a launch. Also, if you're just trying to start a combo, then you can use the launch to summon monsters from your hand. The other cool thing that you might want to do with Boot Sector launch is that if the only Rokket you have access to is Rokket Tracer, you can use the Rokket Tracer to target the Boot Sector launch, destroy it to summon a Rokket from deck, and you're in the game now. So there's a lot of extension going on here. But what exactly is the point of all of this, other than the Borrowload Furious Dragon? Well, turn 1, we've actually got a really nice play that can help us trigger our Rokket effects that I'll go into in a sec. So we've got the Link 2 Booster Dragon. It requires 2 Rokket monsters. And once per turn you can target one other face-up monster on the field. It permanently gains 500 attack and defense, and your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. But that's just an attack buff. Who cares about that? Well, all of our main deck Rockets, other than Rokket Tracer, actually have an effect when they're targeted by a Link monster. So if we can use our own Link monster to target them, then we can trigger their effects. Magna Rokket Dragon, when targeted by a Link monster's effect, you can destroy itself to remove any of your opponent's monsters from the field without destroying and without targeting them. We've also got Metal Rokket Dragon, which, if it is targeted by a Link monster's effect, you can destroy itself and all of your opponent's cards in the same column. So this is very nice for getting rid of back row. If your opponent has more than one card in the same column, you can get rid of multiple cards with this guy. But if you're going first, getting rid of your opponent's cards isn't that nice. What you could do though is use Silver Rokket Dragon, because if it is targeted by a Link monster's effect, you can destroy itself to look at your opponent's extra deck and banish one card from it. This can be absolutely backbreaking against some decks that rely heavily on one of their extra deck monsters. You can get rid of a Nightmare Mermaid to turn off Mermaid Orchest plays. You could get rid of an Odd Eyes Raging Dragon to turn off the Raging Pendulum skill. And of course, people usually play one copy of any extra deck card at a time, so you can just get rid of whatever thing you think would hurt you the most, because they're probably only going to be playing one copy of it anyway. But that's not going to be the optimal play against every deck. Not everyone relies as heavily on their extra deck, and sometimes there are decks out there that just play multiple copies of their important cards in the extra deck anyway. In those cases that you're capable of summoning Booster Dragon, you're probably also capable of summoning Void Ogre Dragon. Void Ogre Dragon is one of the new cards available to this deck. It requires a Dark Tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters. Tracer happens to be a tuner, and all of our Rockets happen to be dark. So 4 plus 4 equals Synchro level 8, and once per turn during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a Spell Trap card while you have no cards in your hand, you can negate the activation and destroy it. So it is a Spell Trap negate, but undead. You need to have no cards in hand to activate it. How is that going to happen? Well, if we have back row, we can either use it or set it, and then we won't have those in our hand. And in terms of our monsters, well, we have the Boot Sector launch to summon multiple Rockets from our hand, so we're not going to have any cards in our hand at the end of our turn anyway. If we feel like the opponent isn't going to be playing back row at all, then we could instead summon an Evil Swarm Nightmare. If you don't have this card, you definitely don't have to play it, but it is a nice addition to the deck. It requires 2 level 4 dark monsters. When your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, except during the damage step, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, change that special summon monster or monsters to face down defense position. Now this effect is not a once per turn, so you'll be able to flip down your opponent's monster or monsters twice when summoned. And because of the fact that it's monster or monsters, if your opponent pendulum summons multiple monsters at the same time, just by activating Evil Swarm Nightmare one time, you're going to flip them all face down. And that might be enough to make them scoop it up. We're not often going to go into this. This is mainly a emergency situation. If we feel like we can't make any other better board, then we can at least make the Evil Swarm Nightmare with 2 level 4s. Going second, we also have number 70 Malevolent Sin and Dark End Dragon. Both of these guys are just good at removing the opponent's monsters. We also have a Borrowload Dragon in here. Of course, I should mention that the skill actually requires that you play Borrowload Dragon. Technically speaking, the skill also requires that you have a minimum of 9 Rokket monsters in your main deck. And that's fine, 9 is pretty much the number we want to play anyway, but we also get to have a Borrowload Dragon if we want to activate this skill. But the skill does more. At the beginning of turn 4 or turn 5, depending on which one is your turn, you send a Delingerous Dragon from outside of your deck to the graveyard. That's this guy. If a Rokket monster is special summoned to your field while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. What's so nice about this is that it is a link to, which alongside 2 of our other monsters we could use to summon Borrowload Dragon. And Borrowload Dragon, he normally requires 3 or more effect monsters, and we can summon him turn 1, but we often don't in favor of other boards. And sometimes we just straight up can't summon him because he's too difficult to summon. And neither player can target this card with monster effects. That's quite relevant. There are a lot of monster effects that target the opponent's cards to remove them. So Borrowload Dragon being unaffected by that is going to be great. He also cannot be targeted by Book of Moon because Book of Moon flips monsters face down and Link monsters cannot be flipped face down. But also, as a quick effect, you can target a face-up monster in the field and it loses 500 attack and defense. And your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. So hypothetically, if we could summon a Borrowload Dragon on our first turn and get out one of our Rockets, we could target one of them to trigger their effects during our opponent's turn and remove their cards from their field or their extra deck during their turn. And you might do this by destroying your Rockets using any of your destruction effects, then summoning them on the end phase to be targeted by the Borrowload Dragon. At the start of the damage step, if this card attacks an opponent's monster, you can place that opponent's monster into a zone that this card points to and take control of it, but send it to the graveyard during the end phase of the next turn, so the opponent's not getting it back. And we just get to take their monster and then attack with their monster. And this effect doesn't target and it doesn't destroy, it just steals it by attacking. However, I should say that if you want to activate this effect, don't put any cards into the zone that your Borrowload points to, otherwise you won't be able to activate it, because your opponent's monster will have to go to that zone. I also play Forbidden Chalice. I do believe that if you can play Forbidden Chalice, then you 100% should, and I am good with playing a 24 card deck, because I don't really want to have too many monsters in my hand. I'm going to have access to my monsters very easily anyway with my Tracer and Quick Launch, and having a monster heavy hand means I don't have all of my amazing back row, and I do want to have some back row. So really the only things that are new about this deck are the Void Ogre Dragon and the validation of Rapid Trigger. Rapid Trigger was already in the game, but using it now is a lot more valid because we can use it alongside a Void Ogre Dragon, then we can have a Borrowload Furious Dragon, a Void Ogre Dragon, and a couple of other Rockets on the field turn 1. But how exactly do you play the deck now? Well, let's get into the combo tutorial, shall we? So, what you want to see in your opening hand is either Rapid Trigger, Dragon's Mirror, or Needle Sealing. Once you have one of those, you know that you're going to be able to do something nice. And then other than that, you're going to need either Rokket Tracer or Quick Launch, or a couple of Rockets. In this scenario, we do have the Rokket Tracer, so, you know, I'm going to normal summon it. And normally, we don't have the Boot Sector Launch in our hand because we have it in the deck. However, in this scenario, I'll just activate it, pretend I'm activating it from the deck, right? But normally we'd have a bonus card in hand because the Boot Sector Launch wouldn't be there. And what we can do is we can activate the Boot Sector Launch, special summon a couple Rockets from hand, and, you know, I'll summon 2 here. However, if you just have 1, you're still getting stuff done. So summoning 2, and I'm not activating Rokket Tracer's effect yet. What I can do is turn 2 monsters into Booster Dragon. And then I could use the Rokket Tracer's effect to destroy my Boot Sector Launch to summon a monster from deck, whichever one I feel is best for the scenario. So I'm going to summon Magna Rokket Dragon here in case I wanted to remove one of my opponent's monsters using the Booster Dragon because I'm going second. If I was going first, however, what I would do is summon Silver Rokket Dragon instead because it gets rid of a card in the opponent's extra deck. Then I have options, to be honest, because I have a tuner and a non-tuner on the field. What I could do is summon Void Ogre Dragon and then set a needle sealing and negate one of the opponent's cards, and at some point use a needle sealing, which will then trigger the booster dragon's other effect. And if this link summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target another dragon monster in your grave and special summon it, and you can only use that once per turn. But what's so great about that is that Void Ogre Dragon isn't actually a once per turn, so not only are we getting rid of all the opponent's monsters with the needle sealing, we're also using the Void Ogre Dragon again, because we can revive it with the booster dragon to negate another back row. But that is one hypothetical situation. What we could also do is we could use the booster dragon to target our own Magna Rokket Dragon, chain the Magna Rokket Dragon to send a card our opponent controls to the graveyard. And from here, we could just simply set the needle sealing, and on the end phase, the Magna Rocket's floating effect will activate, if we had not won that turn, that is. And we could summon one from deck, and doesn't matter which one we summon. If we don't have a Rokket Tracer, then we could just summon that one to get its beneficial quick effect. But I'll summon a Silver Rokket because I haven't used one yet, and I'm not going to be able to target my Silver Rokket this turn, the opponent's turn that is, because I don't have any quick effects that do that with a Link monster, but I do have the needle sealing. And what is so nice about the needle sealing is that I can use it on the opponent's turn. Of course, I could use the tracer if I just so happen to want to. I can target the needle sealing itself, summon another Rokket from the deck. All of my monsters will be destroyed, all of his will be destroyed, but my booster dragon will float. So I could resummon one of my Rockets. So I'll just summon a Magna Rokket here. And then on the end phase, my Metal Rokket and my Silver Rokket will trigger. So the Metal Rokket will summon a Silver from deck, and the Silver will summon a Tracer from deck. And even though I destroyed all of my opponent's field, look, I've got a whole bunch of monsters that I can work with here. And now it's turn 4 or onwards, I could get that Delingerous Dragon in the grave. Isn't that amazing? So I could go into whatever I wanted. I could go into Dark End Dragon here. I could go into a Malevolent Sin. I could even go into a Void Ogre if the opponent set more back row. I happen to top deck a Dragon's Mirror. I play 3 of this because it is a fantastic top deck. Even if we used one already, that's why we play 2 of the Furious. You know, banish a couple of them from grave. And the follow-up play in this deck is absolutely insane. Of course, we do destroy things, but we do have effects that don't destroy, so don't worry about Orchest. We're still going to be able to get rid of that Dingirsu. Scenario, I don't have any monsters at all, but if I have a quick launch, that doesn't matter, because I can activate the quick launch and summon a Rokket Tracer from the deck, and I'll still be all good. So I'll summon that Tracer from deck, and it'll allow me to activate the skill to get my field spell on the field. And the field spell, I'm not going to be able to activate it this game. However, what I could do is, because it is a face-up card, I could use the Rokket Tracer to destroy it to summon another Rokket from the deck. Now that I have a couple of Rockets on the field, my options are very nice. I could go into a Void Ogre Dragon if I wanted. I could go into an Evil Swarm Nightmare if I wanted. I could go into a Booster Dragon because of its floating effect if I wanted to. But Void Ogre Dragon is more often than not going to be the best possible option for you. So I'm going to summon Void Ogre Dragon to negate the opponent's back row. Even though I have a handful of cards, but I do have the Dragon's Mirror, don't I? The Dragon's Mirror can activate, banish those 2 dragons from our graveyard to summon a Borrowload Furious Dragon. And while I'm not going to have another Rokket to destroy to get beneficial floating, I do have Needle Sealing here, and another Needle Sealing and a Forbidden Chalice. Look at this board here. Now that I have no cards in my hand, I can negate back row with my Void Ogre Dragon, and I can destroy something with Borrowload Furious Dragon. And I got all this back row to interrupt the opponent. So even if I have the bare minimum of just access to 1 Rokket Tracer and nothing else, I can still do something broken. So if you just so happen to have a Rapid Trigger in your hand, then what you can do goes crazy. I'm looking forward to when we get a 3rd copy of Rapid Trigger in the game, because we'll have much more chance of opening it, because when you have Rapid Trigger in your hand, it is almost always one of the best hands you can have. I'm going to do the stuff that I standardly would do with Rockets, however I'm also going to use Rapid Trigger. So I'm going to summon Rokket Tracer. Because I happen to have Quick Launch, I might as well use it. I'm going to activate it. Then the Rokket Tracer is going to target my own Quick Launch, and I can summon 2 Rockets from the deck, 1 from the Tracer and 1 from the launch. So I'm going to summon a Magna Rokket here and a Metal Rokket next to it. What I could do is summon Void Ogre Dragon using Rokket Tracer and 1 of my other Rockets here, right? And I'll have a back row negate. And I have Rapid Trigger here as well. So would I use it? That's the question, right? Well, what I could do with Rapid Trigger is, because it does require 2 Dark Dragons, then I could, technically speaking, use Void Ogre Dragon as one of the materials. So what I could do is set all my back row here, the opponent tries to use a back row, we negate it with Void Ogre Dragon, then we chain Rapid Trigger, to use Void Ogre Dragon and our remaining Rokket to go into Borrow Load Furious Dragon to get an additional interruption. It will destroy the Magna Rokket, so I'll also be able to float something on end phase. But if I have a Dragon's Mirror, oh my goodness, does everything go further. I can use Borrow Load Furious, banish a couple from the grave. So you can kind of treat Rapid Trigger like Mask Change sometimes. Maybe the opponent has Book of Moon for your Borrow Load Furious Dragon. You can use the Rapid Trigger to kind of protect it, you know what I mean? Also, at any time during the combo, if the opponent interrupted you and put you in a really tough spot and you just so happen to have a couple of Rockets on the field, chain Rapid Trigger. Get out your Borrow Load Furious, get rid of one of their other interruptions, and then keep playing from there. Looking to get more basics about how this deck works, please go ahead and check out our previous Rokket video. This is mainly an update video and also a little bit of a guide. But there is a reason that this deck is tier 2. It's so good at playing through interruptions, it's so good at comboing, it's so good at following up. Everything it does well. I do want to say though that technically speaking, there are people that play a heavy amount of traps in this deck, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. However, the more you play, the less you're going to have your actual engine, so do keep that in mind when you're building your deck. People also like to play Necrofusion, potentially. I don't like it personally because I feel like Dragon's Mirror is better, and if I needed a quick effect to fusion summon, then I do have the Rapid Trigger as well. But Necrofusion lets you basically do the same thing as Dragon's Mirror, but it banishes the materials face down from your graveyard only. And the fact that it's done during the opponent's turn is kind of nice too. I do have enough fusion spells in my deck, but if you wanted more, you could potentially play Necrofusion if you wanted. Or if you didn't have 3 copies of Dragon's Mirror, maybe you could replace them with Necrofusion. At the end of the day, your deck is your deck. I'm not going to tell you how to build it. You can build it however you like. I'm just here to show you how to play the deck. But hey, let's get into the replay, shall we? So my opponent's going first here, and they are playing Trains. But funnily enough, this guy's actually got a good turn 1 when playing Trains here. So he's going to summon his Pegasus, summon the Derek Crane here, and Derek Crane kind of has a similar effect to heavy infantry, that basically when it's detached you get to pop your opponent's card, which is kind of nice. So he's also going to be able to turn off my grave, which is a good choice because I do have grave effects, right? However, I don't need grave effects to win the game here. He's going to get a search off, and we're just going to go. So we're going to normal summon the Rokket Tracer. I'm going to activate Quick Launch and then use the Tracer to target the Quick Launch so I can get 3 monsters on the field. So awesome. So I'm going to summon 1, summon 2, and then I can use the skill to get my field spell online, activate that field spell, right? Then I can use these 2 to go into Booster Dragon. He's going to use Abyss Dweller to use Derek Crane to destroy my Booster Dragon. But the thing is, I still get a couple of monsters on the field because of my field spell, so I just simply go into Malevolent Sin, get rid of his monster, and then activate the Dragon's Mirror. That's what's so nice about Dragon's Mirror as opposed to every other fusion spell, is you can just activate it by itself with the cards in grave without having to have any other cards on field or in hand. And yeah, that's just GG's. It's a really good going second deck. My opponent is playing Magician's Magic, Dark Magicians. I got the Rapid Trigger in my hand, so we'll see just how good our hand is. So, going to normal summon Rokket Tracer, use the Quick Launch, chain the Tracer, destroying my Quick Launch. Summon a couple monsters from our deck here, and then what we can do, activate the field spell, and because we got a monster heavy situation, here's what we can do. So I activate the Boot Sector Launch, Synchro Summon Void Ogre Dragon, and use the Boot Sector summon another monster from hand, and destroy both of them with Rapid Trigger to fusion summon Borrow Load Furious Dragon. On the end phase, it'll allow me to summon a couple more Rockets from the deck, and that's free real estate, really. So now it's my opponent's turn. I got a back row negate and a card destruction here, as well as floating and the Tracer effect for effect dodging. So he's going to get his Conjure and his Dark Magician go. He's going to normal summon that Conjure there. If he tries to activate that quick play spell, I'll negate it with the Void Ogre. Then he's going to set his back row. I'm going to destroy one of them with the Furious. It'll summon another from deck. If he tries to activate that back row, I'll negate it with a Void Ogre. He uses it, I negate it. It doesn't matter what it was. And that's just GG's. Although I should say before I deal this lethal bit of damage, I probably should mention that if you summon a monster with Rapid Trigger, then it can only attack monsters special summoned from the extra deck. So I wouldn't have been able to attack with this guy in this scenario anyway, but normally if your opponent has something summoned from the extra deck, then you attack with Furious first before anything else. I couldn't in this case, but normally that's what you do. But that's GG's. My opponent is going second and he is playing Odd Eyes, and the thing about the Rokket deck is that if you go first against Odd Eyes, you could pretty much guarantee that you'll win the game. So I'm going to summon the Tracer from the deck, and then I'm going to activate the skill to get my field spell on the field, and then I'll use the field spell to summon a couple of Rockets from my hand. And it doesn't matter which ones they are because the Tracer will give me what I want. So Tracer is going to destroy my Metal Rokket, so I can go into Void Ogre Dragon here, and then I will, you know, use the floating effect to go into a Rokket Tracer, and I have the Rapid Trigger set here. Absolutely amazing. But there's something else you can do with a Rapid Trigger on the opponent's turn if you have a Rokket Tracer. So it's his turn, he uses Cosmic Cyclone. I'm not going to negate it. I am going to just activate that Rapid Trigger. He's going to use Cosmic on my field spell as well. I don't care. Rokket Tracer is going to destroy one of my face-up spells to summon another Rokket from deck. Then I can use two of my Rockets to go onto Borrowload Furious Dragon. And then he can use Pendulum Call. I'll negate that. Negating that Pendulum Call or negating a key scale is absolutely GG's. Guys, let me know how you feel about Rockets in the comments below. If you have any questions about how the deck operates, or any questions in general about the deck, be sure to leave them in the comments and we can talk about it. If you like the video, subscribe if you're new around here, hit that bell to get notified every time we make a new video, and I've been Undead from Team 6K, signing out.
Wait, hey, I feel like the greatest, now I feel like they hate it, now I feel like the only one and there is no debating, man I feel like they leaving, now I feel like they waited, now I feel like this is the feeling before I can make it, before I hit the stage. I just feel like I'm nauseous, or I feel like I'm popping, or I feel like a boss is. Maybe I'm feeling off it, or I feel like I'm toxic. Maybe feeling intoxicated is the reason for all this. I wanna whip it with the top down, dog, like I'm Earth Gang. Told him, listen, wild day shine like my first name. Told me go and grab a titty boy, it's my first chain. I ain't even switch gears yet, it's the first lane. The first pain I ever felt was the worst pain. Then church came, and that feeling of hurt came. Then her name made this feeling all worth pain. She made me realize what I had felt in the first place.